Right, another Gold Star. They seem to come all the time now. Now this one belongs to Peter, and Peter's had this bike quite a long time. In fact, it's been off the road best part of 17 years. This came in yesterday. Alex picked it up, came down yesterday, and the first impression was, what's happened to it? The bike, it looks a bit tired at the moment, but to be honest with you, underneath all this, it will clean up. It's sat in a garage. Now, I used to have a precast garage. They have a tendency of, they do sweat. You get a change in temperature, you get moisture, and you go out in the garage, and if it's covered with a cloth, you want to take it off. You'll find the whole bike would be like, it can be quite damp, and that will turn to moisture and be droplets of water and be quite wet. Well, if it's in there all the time, it doesn't come out, it doesn't dry out. I think one of the biggest things you can do really is either use a vac bag in the winter if you're not using anything for a considerable amount of time, or you just spray it up with something like AF50, ACF50, or WD40. You need some protection on the metalwork, because if we look at the engine here, we've got oxidization here on the aluminium, we've got the mud guards, the chrome, they're starting to go a little bit. Now we're going to clean all this back. We're not doing this bike to concours because I think it will spoil it. But we do need to clean up a lot. The wheels will clean, so the alley's going to be okay. These front shrouds, because they are quite spidered, it means the paint underneath is rusty. It's on the steel, it's spidered. So they're going to come off because he wants to put standard bars on, so we're going to put shrouds up here. They'll be black painted shrouds. We'll repaint these, and he's going to have straight A10 bars. We'll talk about what we're going to do very quickly on this. This guy is a little bit older than me, and he's had it a long time. It hasn't been ridden for 17 years. I'm going to put to him, as you're going to have it now with a standard touring bars, A10 bars. Remember we just done Ian's bike, it looked really nice. We're going to suggest to him we take this GP carb off and we put an amyl carb on like on Ian's. It will look nice because it had the bell mouth like Ian's, but the big advantage will be that it will tick over. And I think for someone of his generation now, it'd be more pleasurable to ride. It'd be in a state of tune where you can start it, valve lifter, you can go at the top, and we check his compression. If we need to lower it, we can do. We can put a decompression plate in there. But he'll be able to start it and it will tick over, and that's most important, I think, really. He doesn't want these, and that's probably why I would go later on. Bring it up to the bars up here, you know, you've still got your Goldie. There's nothing wrong with that. So we've got quite a lot to do on this. Now, yesterday, because I wanted to make a bit of a start, so we took the tank off, we've taken the seat off, and you can see the exhaust is taken off here. The tank, we'll show that later on. It might pay to replace the tank because it's quite rusty, underneath has been repaired, and we've shown those tanks that we can get, new tanks that come from India. It might be a good idea to put one of those on here. We go around the other side of the bike, just going to show you very quickly. Last night I decided to speed things up a little bit today, so I've taken the primary chain cover, outer case cover off and removed the clutch. The reason I've done that, if we go to the bench, we've got a non-standard clutch here. We've got a Bob Newby clutch. If you look here, you can focus on this. This is a racing clutch, and let me just put that in there. It's belt drive. This is quite a good conversion. The reason I took it off last night was my normal Triumph clutches use an extractor to get the clutch off. It's nice and easy. This one, because that's a pressure plate assembly, goes over the top. Underneath here, this is the clutch center. That goes onto the main shaft. That's on a taper with a keyway. So there's a washer and there's a nut. You remove that, obviously, you've got to get that off. The easiest way, it could take a while. What I tend to do with something like this is warm it with a blow lamp first. Just warm it up, get the heat into here, try to get some expansion here a little bit, and spray it with WD-40. And what you really want to do is put your nut back on. Don't put the washer back on. Put the nut back on so it's flush with the threads. I'll just show you on here. Put the nut back on. Go right, I won't do it now, right down. Then what you need to do is just tap that with a drift. On your own it's a bit awkward, but it does come away and you can see the keys there still. So I wanted to get that done last night, and if we look at the crankshaft, we look at the thread on the end of the crank, you see this white powder? Well, that is Loctite. So again, because it's been Loctite, it's a good idea to get a blow lamp, warm that up, break that Loctite seal, then undo it, because it does grip on. There's quite a considerable amount of Loctite on there. Because if you look very quickly, if we look at the end of the shaft, we've got a pulley drive. Obviously we've got a belt drive now. There's no tab washer, it's just got the spacer and a nut, and you can see the white powder in here. So blow lamp, warm it up, take the nut off, and we can put it off. So that's what we've done last night. So today we can do a quick tear down. We're going to drain the oil. We're going to take the oil tank off. Then what we do is we take this primary chain case off. We'll take out the gearbox. It's easier first. Then we'll take the carb off, and we'll just lift the engine out. It's so easy to do like that. You can break it down in different ways. You can take the engine out first, but it's easier because the gearbox is smaller. We have more room. We can just take this out in one lump, and we'll put it in our stand, and we'll take it apart for you. So that's what we're going to do. So we'll start with the oil change, drain down first. Now she might have wet sump quite a bit. There's still got a bit in the oil tank. This will be flushed out, this tank, but it's easier in the moment to take this tank off really, because it's got to be flushed anyway, so nice to get it out of the way. Something I don't normally do is wear gloves, but today we're wearing gloves because it's a bit grubby, the bike, so it's a little bit harder working with getting nuts and washers off and not dropping things, so let's see how we go. There you go. Yeah, what we must always make sure that we've got some foam behind the oil tank running on the frame spar. What we'll do is we use the Sorbo rubbers when we get those for the tank. We use another one we cut in half and use on here to support that better. Right, it's going to go in a sec. Okay, quick reference. Now, we got the outer primary chain case cover off, and behind the clutch we have the main shaft with a key. Now the Bob Newby clutch goes straight onto here. It doesn't fit and do anything here. Now when it was standard, when it was running either BSA or the Triumph clutch, it would have the main shaft adapter, which this is. And the idea of this, it sits on the keyway and it goes into this sliding plate. It's got a worm on the back of it, a scroll. The idea is that any oil will be kept into the primary chain case because you've got a certain amount running on the primary chain just for lubrication, and it's just to stop any oil going out the back. So, and when the gearbox is adjusted back, this sliding plate, it's an easy way to show you, there's a key now, will move. It will go backwards, or if it needs to be slackened off, it will go that way. So it's a good seal, and that's what that hasn't got on the back of that, which is fine because it's a dry clutch now, it's not having any oil in there, but it does mean that the back is open. So I thought I'd just show you that anyway. So what we're going to do now, we're just going to take this cover off, and then we're ready to get the gearbox out and start doing that for you. Just a note, sometimes you'll find when you take off the primary chain case inner cover, any of the BSAs, Sometimes they don't line up in the frame correctly, and there's normally a spacer washer between the inner cover and the frame. This one hasn't got one, it's up tight, but sometimes there's a gap and people forget to put it back in. Always make sure that the washer, if there is a gap, you put a washer in there and you don't strain the cover over. What we always do, make sure that the plate itself hasn't worn thin. Now these little nuts here, these are the correct ones. It's like a pivot bolt here, so it's got a space to move. And we do a visual check. I did make a note that when I took the outer cover off, there's a screw missing, and on the packet it says one missing screw. So we're just going to check to make sure the threads are okay, because it might well be that threads have been pulled out and it's dropped out. So here we are. It shows you now the gearbox. Because I've got the chain on, we'll knock off the locking collar, tab washer, then we'll take these plates off, and then we can get the gearbox out of the way. It's too loose, shouldn't be loose. Reason we do this with the chain on, you can hold the brake on or you chock the wheel and it stops this from turning, but that collar needs to be tight. That wasn't very tight. And the idea, we lock this when we come to do it back together, we'll lock this up really tight with a copper drift, then we get the tab washer and just pin it into the gap. We'll put a new tab washer on here each time we do this job. Another thing we always check is the main shaft, because where we showed just now the drive adapter that goes on there, it can be loose, the nut's not been tight, and it causes the key to move in the keyway. It chatters and it can chip it out, but this one's in good order. Also, we're checking the main shaft, and we're sleeve gear in here, we're making sure the bushes look okay. So quick reference we can do now, get an idea what the gearbox is like as well. This looks okay, as I think all this wants is a really good clean up really. So we'll take this off now. Shown this before, but we do this again anyway. So the main chain, drive chain, back wheel, we look for the links, and we can see there's quite a bit of movement and the rollers are quite worn. We look for the sprocket, and we look for hook teeth, and you see straight away the teeth are hooking over. And we look for the thinness here in the actual tooth itself. The new one is quite wide there, and what happens is starts moving a lot inside. When the chain's on, you get a lot of movement. Let's just get that. And you'll find that the chain will do this. This is why you get stretch, because it's fighting all the time like that. So yeah, well worn out, have been replaced. Because we've got a dry clutch now, we've got this a Bob newbie clutch, we've put a new belt on, because this belt, there's a lot of belt dust in here. This is what this is. It's not oil because it's running dry. So we look at the state of this belt, but we replace it. Like a cam belt in a car, you know, you need to replace it. So we've got the right size there, we can order that up. We'll take the clutch plates out and clean those, but that's all we need to do. So that's our transmission out of the way. We'll take the chain guard off. Now these are a bit awkward, you've got two bolts at the front. one each side, but you come through the back of the frame to get to the other one, the other side. But it makes it easier because you need to take these the mounting plates to the gearbox out. It's nearly out. People say it's a curse getting this bolt out. It's okay, you just need a long extension. You put your socket the other side because it won't go through your socket. You won't get through the hole. Right, that's out the way. What we need to do, we get the wheel out at the moment, but it just gets it away from here so we can get to this plate. Almost ready to take the gearbox out. We're going to take the engine plate off the other side first. Before we do any more, we just take off the speedo drive to the gearbox and just drop the cable out the gearbox on the top here, the clutch cable. Yeah, we struggled here because the corrosion in the bike, that the cable, this is the ferrule end on the end of the cable, was stuck into the adjuster, so it's freed off now. So we just get the adjuster right out the back of the gearbox. We'll be putting new cables on this anyway. We'll just get out of the way for the moment. Okay, so what we're going to do now, got the top bolt, which is the pivot bolt with the adjuster on. We'll take that off of here, take this one out. Bottom you've got the main pivot, we'll take that off, and we'll take the plate off on the other side, and yeah, it should come out fairly quickly now. Come around the other side. So, gearbox is out. First thing we do, have a quick check over it. We'll drain the oil down and we'll take it apart quickly for you. We're just going to have a bit of a tidy up. But as you can see here, it's far easier. This is always trouble with, say it's been together a while, it's a bit corroded, it's a job to get the bolts out, the plates. But it makes it much easier to take this out. Something that did, I think I mentioned it earlier, this top mount is missing for the engine because normally I leave that in situ. What we need to do in a moment is put a scissor jack underneath the crankcase to hold it up while we take the front engine mounts out. But we can take the carb off, we can take off the valve lifter, the oil feed to the rocker feed there, and yeah, that won't be a long job to come out. But BSAs are nice to work on. I suppose it's one of the mark I enjoy doing the most, really. I think most people have a mark, but the quality of BSA are very good. And yeah, quality, way it's put together. Work on some bikes, and it can be a right pain to get the engine and gearbox out of a frame. Atlas, Dominators, things like that. It's quite, you can do it, but it's harder than working on one of these. These are nice. So quick clear up. We just put all the bolts back together as they should be. So before we do anything to this gearbox, we're just going to drop the oil out. The easiest place really is from this rear inspection cover, so I just want to drop it quickly for you to see. So I'm just going to tip the gearbox in the vise a bit more so I don't have the oil coming out. We take these screws out. So you can get a good idea now what the box is like. So we're going to drain the oil off, but while you're in that position, the one thing that you often find is worth checking with these gearboxes is your kickstart stop. Now when the kickstart, let's just tighten this up a bit. When that comes back, it comes against a stop, and this gets loose. We'll show you this inside the gearbox, but that suffers. When that comes back to that position, it slackens off and it can wear the casing. On our project bike, that was badly worn on the casing I used, so I made up an insert, pressed it in, repaired it. So yeah, but we check now for kickstart, pivot, bush, see what that's like. It's a bit worn. Same with the gear lever, we check that. Also check this as well. On Ian's bike, we actually machined all this out and we put a bush in the top of here. That's slightly worn. Showed you before which sleeve gear, which is a high gear. The bush is inside here. This seems to be okay. And we just run the box and just feel it. We can just see if that selects all right. And here you can see, you want to see the box working. Yeah, if I tip this back, and you'll be able to see where we select and the gears move over. So we go back to neutral, then we go to second, then we go to third, then we go to fourth. So you don't often get the chance to see that. And that's into first, back into neutral. Hasn't got a great deal in there. You can see it's leaked quite a bit. They do lose oil through the main seal behind the sprocket. If they don't get checked, there's not a great deal in there really. So we can take the outer cover off. Best to take your gear lever off first, off the spline. Okay, sometimes there's a circlip out the back of there, or a snap ring, sometimes. We might as well slacken those screws off, because this is where you fill your gearbox from. It gives you access to the course adjuster on the clutch for the push rod. We leave the kickstart on at the moment, because when we take the outer cover off, we need to just take the tension off the spring. So in here, this is where there'd be a push rod that goes through the centre of the main shaft, and this is a course adjuster on this end, and up inside there would be a ball. We show that in a moment when we get it apart. I said we just check to see if there's excessive wear here, which there isn't. That's not bad. So we have 4 bolts on studs and we have 3 screws. People get very worried about doing anything with gearboxes, sometimes more so than engines. I don't know why. I suppose it's that dark art really. But if you keep it clean, keep everything nice and clean and don't rush it, it's quite easy really. You know, if it's right, it'll go together. If it's not right, it won't go together. Make sure the vise is tight. Just take that back a little bit. We can tap here, but don't put too much pressure on because you don't want to crack your casing. Just trying to break the seal. This is where having the kickstart does help. It's starting to go now. Right, we'll just make sure that we get this forward a little bit. Surprising how a gasket will hang on. I tend to use even pressure. And it should a little bit more. Come away. So you can see in here what I showed you just now, on the end of your clutch arm you've got this coarse adjuster here, well, a lock nut, threaded rod, so that slackens off that nut and you can wind that adjuster in, takes the tension up onto that push rod if there's excessive movement on the cable. And the ball, that's what the end of the push rod will run onto. Here is your drive for your speedo, which runs off the lay shaft. It's got a worm gear there, and your kickstart spring. And this is your kickstart pivot with your gear. We just check to make sure there's no damage here. This box looks in good order. It's just something, it's just superficial corrosion on the outside. We had a slightly worn bush. We'll check that out because that's quite easy to do. And we mentioned before, when you've had bushes, you get a lot of wear. Because it's got needle bearings inside, you won't get that. You will get a certain amount because it's got needle bearings, but that's all good. This is the ratchet gear, and these teeth can wear, the main part for the kickstart. So that will ratchet backwards, like that, then engage, and these teeth can get quite badly worn. It's where they select into the kickstarter gear here. I've known these to get chipped badly in the past. So this is your selector paw, and we call this selector fork, and inside the gearbox, we'll see it later, you have your selector cam. And it's so important when you build a box up. I can show you here, we'll just take it back through the gears if I can do it with a screwdriver. Right. When you build the gearbox up, you must make sure that the dot is in line with the case dot on the side. If that's not correct, when you put your outer cover on, this one here, when the paw goes in, it won't be in the correct position, because the paw, do it this way, it's easier to show you, has to pick up on these flats in the correct position. So if that's not right, you can, what I found on a recent job I had was the customer could select first gear, he went to second, it would go into neutral, it wouldn't go into second, he had to keep jabbing the gear lever, let the clutch out and jab it again, because the dot wasn't lined up correctly. It's very important to get that bit right. These nice boxes to work on, straightforward, very well made, good quality. Yeah, so the next part to come off, we need to take the main shaft nut off here, tab washer, take the ratchet gear off, and we have one case screw in the top here. Don't forget that one, because it's underneath the gasket. Sometimes that's covered. When the gasket goes over, it covers the screw. And then we can take this bit off. This is what I showed you just now. This is damaged. And this is normal case. This is the kickstart stop. We'll show that later on, how that comes back. It comes back with a bit of tension, bangs on there. And if it's loose, starts to get loose, it starts to wear the casing. So it's a bit of a repair. In fact, you can see where it's been repaired in the past. You can see this aluminium welding here. This sometimes is worse when you've got high compression bikes. People kick and they get kicked back, and the kickstart comes back, bang, hits against that stop. Can cause a lot of that. We'll sort that out for him. But so far, okay. Don't like hitting screwdrivers, but these are designed for this really. Got metal bits on the end. So we're just going to lift this tab up as much as I can. I've got to replace it, so I just want to get it away. Just flatten it back. Like that. Now, if you hadn't got a windy gun, like I have, you would have to hold the end of this shaft. It might be easier to put a sprocket back on here, grip that with a chain wrench and undo that. Because I'm going to put a socket on here with an air gun, I can take that off. So we've got the tab washer. And this part here is part of the ratchet assembly. These teeth don't wear so much, always check that, but most of the wear is on this part here. So we have a sleeve and we have a spring. The sleeve is a bit tight in there, but we can sort that out. But you can have a good visual inspection of these. They're okay. I've got teeth I can show you later on that are really bad. That's okay. They're quite serviceable. Excuse me, quite serviceable. We'll put new tab washer on when we put it back together. So all we've got to do now is take the screw out the casing, the top screw. It's loose. Just give that a tap, and that should come apart easily. Just tap it evenly off. There's always a bit of oil that you don't drain down that comes out across the vise. That's why we keep that there, so it just grabs it. Just keep back the, oh, that's the back washer for the ratchet gear assembly. And you get this because it's got needle bearings. If the gearbox you have has got the bushes, you don't have these because the bush is a top hat shape and the bush works as a spacer. So make sure that you keep space with your shaft. So showed you before, we call this in here the this is your main selector plate. This is your selector fork. Now up in the back of there's teeth, and they engage with these teeth here. So it's so critical to get that correctly positioned. I say when that goes together, because the way it works, the gears round, you won't get your gears if you misaligned this. then you have the paw on the outside. So you've got three parts. You've got the paw, you've got the selector fork, and the selector plate. So what we need to do to pull the box apart, we've got the main selector shaft that goes through the selector dogs, and it's held in the casing with a little screw on the end here. Now you have to dig it away a little bit. I might need a finer screwdriver just to get the muck out of the way. Yeah, I need a smaller screwdriver on it, because they punch these over. I tend to, when I put these back in, just use a little bit of silicone over the end of it, just to seal it up so it can't come undone. Take it right out and put it somewhere safe. We'll put all these things in a bag in a moment. Now what we can do, we can pull the shaft out. Might need to tap it away to start with, or a pair of pliers to pull it out. Okay. Once this is removed, we now can start taking, really, we'll do this one. We can take the main shaft out, or we can do it on here for you can see it better. Take that pinion gear off. We showed that already. What we'll check here later on is the bush, to make sure it's not badly worn. So this is where we can start taking the dogs out, select the dogs. That's one. Now what we can do now is just we take the main shaft out. Now you've got the dog in here. This is on the lay shaft. So just take that out of there. Sometimes it's easier to do it with the box around the other way, but that's going to come out all together now. Right. So this is where the inspection at the back of the box is so important. When you put these selector dogs back in place, they have to go onto both parts of the gears, like this here. And sometimes it's quite easy to slip one between. If I just part that with the oil, you can so easy think you've got it together, and it's not. You've dropped one in between. So it's quite critical to get that right. What we're looking for here, we'll give this a good clean up later. It's all clean oil, this hasn't done very much since it was last put together. We look for chipped teeth, we're looking for picking up on the shaft, but this looks in good order. Needle bearings are good. There's no need to take this selector cam plate out, not really. We're going to look at the main shaft here, because where they go, and I'll show you what this back, they get badly scored, and this one, so we'll check out. We'll take the gears off to start with. If you look at this here, this is where they suffer. There's a bit of wear on here. We'll try and polish this up. We'll polish this out and we just see if it's really bad, we have to replace this shaft. Just put these gears back on. But it's where the high gear, we're going to show this one in a moment, we're going to take this out of the box. So we're going to knock it out, just going to drop out the high gear. So just tap it through the casing. Right, so all our wear on the main shaft is where this runs. We have a needle roller running here. On the standard box, this would just be bronze bushes. But because this is the RRT2 gearbox, there's a bronze bush one end and the needle the other end. And we just show you, just see how much See, there's where there's quite a lot of wear here. So we're going to probably try and pick up another shaft for this, because that's when the needle bearing's running. And you can see up here saying now it's apart. If I show you there, look, there's quite excessive wear now. But this is higher in the box than the lay shaft. The lay shaft is good. We haven't got any wear in there at all. But it looks like we need to get another main shaft for it. But check all these gears, have a good clean. No, I'll degrease it all and go through it all. But that's basically the box. So we have two of those. They're identical. You can't get them wrong. And that's your main part of the gearbox. And here we got the pinion gear here, and this one goes on this shaft here with the washer on the outside, which is your spacer. And that really is it, really. But yeah, it's worth if you're doing a job like this, take it right down. The last job done in here, on an A7 behind, we'll show you that a bit later, I took all the gearbox out like this, in situ. Because you can, if you take your primary chain case off, you know, in situ when the engine's in the frame and it's all built up, take the clutch out, take the back cover off, you can take the sprocket off, you can take the shaft, take it all out and leave this casing in place, because it had been wrongly assembled with the index of the gears not quite correct. The other thing what we'll do, we'll give this a good flush out, just making sure there's nothing in the back of here. We'll give it a good flush out and we'll make sure there's no cracks in the cases. Then we can build this back up. So that's the gearbox. So we're going to clear this away, then we're going to drop the engine out for you, and you can see what's going on there.